Most financial advice assumes you're at your best. Focused, motivated, clear-headed, disciplined. It assumes you're sitting down calmly, making rational decisions, and carefully following a plan. That version of you barely exists. The version of you that actually makes money decisions is tired. Tired after work, tired after stress, tired after emotional labor, tired after making 100 decisions that had nothing to do with money. And when you're tired, everything changes. Your patience drops, your impulse control weakens, your tolerance for friction disappears. This is not a character flaw, it's biology. When energy is low, the brain shifts priorities. Long-term thinking shuts down. Short-term relief becomes dominant. Avoidance feels safer than effort. And yet, this is the exact state in which most money decisions happen. At night, on the couch, scrolling, after a long day, when you just want peace. That's the real battleground. Not spreadsheets, not motivation, not discipline, fatigue. If your financial system only works when you're energized, organized, and emotionally stable, it doesn't work, because life guarantees fatigue. So the real question isn't, how do I manage money better? It's, how do I design a money system that works when I'm exhausted? That's what we're building today. First, we need to destroy a dangerous myth. The myth is that tired people make bad decisions because they don't care enough. That's wrong. Tired people care deeply. They just don't have the mental energy to fight themselves. Willpower is not infinite. Attention is not unlimited. Self-control is not free. Every decision costs energy. And money decisions are some of the most emotionally expensive decisions we make. Because money is never just money. It's security, it's status, it's fear, it's identity, it's future. When you're tired, the brain wants one thing: relief. Relief from thinking, relief from pressure, relief from responsibility. This is why tired spending feels so different. It's not about desire, it's about escape. Escape from effort, escape from stress, escape from feeling behind. And most financial systems completely ignore this. They rely on constant engagement, constant tracking, constant correction, constant restraint. That's not a system, that's a burden. And burdens break when energy drops. So let's reframe everything. A good money system is not one that maximizes optimization. It's one that minimizes effort. It doesn't ask, how can I do this perfectly? It asks, how can this still work on my worst day? That's the standard. Now let's talk about why tiredness is predictable. Most people treat fatigue like a failure. I shouldn't be this exhausted. I should have more energy. I need to push harder. But fatigue isn't random. It's scheduled. It shows up after work, after conflict, after decision-heavy days, after social pressure, after emotional regulation. In other words, exactly when money decisions happen. So instead of fighting fatigue, we design around it. Just like engineers design bridges for worst-case loads, not best-case conditions. Your financial system must assume you will procrastinate, you will avoid, you will choose easy over optimal. You will default to what's familiar. Design with that in mind. Now let's talk about the core principle. When you're tired, you don't rise to intentions, you fall to defaults. Defaults control behavior more than motivation ever will. If spending is the default, you spend. If saving is the default, you save. If ignoring money is the default, avoidance wins. So the most powerful thing you can do is change your defaults, not your goals, not your motivation, not your discipline, your defaults. Now let's break this down practically. A tired brain has 3 rules. Rule 1, it avoids friction. Anything that feels complex, delayed, or effortful gets postponed. Rule 2, it chooses immediate relief over delayed benefit. Now beats later. Rule 3, it sticks with whatever requires the fewest decisions. Decision fatigue pushes the brain toward automation. Your system must obey these rules, not fight them. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake people make. They add more tasks, more tracking, more checking, more budgeting, more apps, more rules. They think structure equals control, but structure without energy equals collapse. A tired brain doesn't want structure. It wants simplicity. So instead of adding layers, we remove them. The strongest money systems are quiet. They run in the background. They don't demand attention. They don't require daily effort. They don't guilt you when you ignore them. They assume neglect, and they still work. This is the mindset shift. You don't design for the version of you who's excited about change. You design for the version of you who wants to be left alone. Now let's talk about the first pillar, automation, before motivation. If money relies on you to move it manually, it will eventually stop moving. Not because you don't care, but because life gets heavy. Automation removes timing from the equation. Savings that happen before you see the money don't compete with fatigue. Investments that run automatically don't require confidence. Bills that autopay don't demand attention. This isn't laziness. This is respect for reality. Every automated decision removes one opportunity for tired sabotage. Now let's talk about visibility. Tired brains are easily overwhelmed. Too many numbers trigger avoidance. Too many accounts create confusion. Too much information causes shutdown. So we simplify visibility, not by hiding everything, but by showing only what matters. One spending account, one buffer account, one long-term growth path. Complexity creates friction. Friction kills follow-through. The goal is not to micromanage. The goal is to reduce anxiety. Now let's talk about emotional timing. Most people try to fix their finances when they feel stressed. That's the worst time. Stress narrows thinking. Urgency distorts judgment. Fear pushes extremes. The best systems are designed during calm periods, not executed during them. You don't redesign the plane mid-flight. You build it on the ground, so the work happens once. Then the system runs. Now let's talk about why this feels wrong. Because effort feels virtuous. Struggle feels earned. Ease feels suspicious. But ease is not the enemy. Fragility is. A system that collapses when you're tired is fragile. A system that works quietly is resilient. Resilience beats effort over time. Now let's talk about identity again. People who design tired-proof systems stop seeing themselves as bad with money because the system doesn't ask them to perform. It supports them. This restores self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of long-term change. You don't need confidence to start. You need reliability. Reliability creates confidence. Now here's the turning point. Once your system works when you're tired, it works all the time. That's when financial stress drops. That's when progress becomes boring. That's when money stops dominating mental space. And that's when real freedom begins. Not because you optimized everything, but because you stopped fighting yourself. Now let's talk about the most misunderstood idea in personal finance. Most people believe progress requires effort. It doesn't. It requires direction. Effort without direction creates exhaustion. Direction without effort creates momentum. When you're tired, effort collapses. Direction doesn't. That's why systems matter more than motivation. A system answers one question in advance. What will happen when I don't feel like thinking? Because that moment is guaranteed. Now let's zoom in on low motivation behavior. When motivation is low, the brain defaults to whatever feels familiar. Not whatever is optimal, not whatever is responsible, whatever is familiar. That's why people return to old habits under stress, not because they forgot the new ones, but because familiarity feels safe. So instead of trying to replace habits with discipline, we replace familiarity with better defaults. We make the healthy option familiar. We make the unhealthy option inconvenient. We make the neutral option invisible. This is how behavior changes without effort. Now let's talk about the one decision framework. The tired brain hates repetition. Every repeated decision drains energy, so the goal is to turn repeated decisions into one-time decisions. Decide once. Let it repeat automatically. You decide once how much gets saved, how much gets invested, how much is allowed for spending. What happens when income increases? What happens when income drops? After that, the system executes. No daily judgment, no emotional debates, no second guessing. One decision made while calm beats 1,000 decisions made while tired. Now let's talk about emotional spending specifically. Most people try to stop emotional spending by controlling urges. That's backwards. Urges are signals, not commands. Emotional spending isn't about desire. It's about regulation. People spend to regulate stress, to regulate boredom, to regulate insecurity, to regulate comparison. When money becomes the regulator, it gets abused. So instead of saying don't spend, we remove money from the emotional role. We do this by creating friction at the exact moment emotion peaks, cooling off delays, separate spending accounts, spending buffers that run out quietly, pre-committed limits that don't require willpower. These aren't restrictions, they're circuit breakers. They give emotion time to pass, and emotions always pass. Now let's talk about why tired people overshoot extremes. When tired, people don't choose balance. They choose extremes, overspending or total restriction, obsessive tracking or total avoidance, risky bets or total paralysis. Balance requires energy. Extremes feel simpler, so your system must force balance automatically, not by choice, by design. This is why percentage-based systems outperform rigid budgets. Percentages adapt without effort. Rigid numbers demand constant adjustment. Tired brains hate adjustment. Adaptive systems survive fatigue. Now let's talk about the role of boredom again. Boredom is essential. When money becomes boring, it stops hijacking attention. Excitement is draining. Predictability is calming. The goal isn't to make money fun, it's to make it forgettable. The less you think about money, the better the system is working. Now let's address a fear people don't say out loud. If I stop paying attention, won't everything fall apart? Only if the system is bad. Good systems don't need supervision. They're built with guardrails, with buffers, with margins of error. They expect neglect. This is why emergency buffers matter psychologically, not just financially. They reduce the cost of mistakes. And when mistakes aren't catastrophic, fear decreases. Fear is what causes overreaction. Now let's talk about protecting progress during chaos. Life events don't ask permission. Illness, job changes, family emergencies, burnout. During chaos, people abandon systems that require effort. But systems designed for tiredness survive chaos. They downshift automatically. They reduce exposure. They protect essentials. They pause non-critical actions. This isn't quitting, it's resilience. Now let's talk about the quiet power of predictability. Predictability creates trust. When your system behaves the same way every month, your nervous system relaxes. When your nervous system relaxes, impulsive decisions drop. This is how emotional stability indirectly increases wealth, not by earning more, by leaking less. Now let's talk about why people resist this approach. Because it feels passive. It doesn't stroke the ego. It doesn't reward struggle. It doesn't feel heroic. But heroics are expensive. Quiet systems compound. Most people want to feel productive. We want visible effort. We want visible effort. We want emotional reward. But wealth is built in invisible moments, in automatic transfers, in unspent money, in ignored temptations, in boring months. The tired-proof system accepts invisibility. Now let's talk about identity one last time. People who design systems for fatigue stop identifying as trying. They start identifying as someone whose system works. This shifts self-perception. They don't say, I need to get better at money. They say, my system handles that. That identity change is powerful. Because when identity shifts, behavior follows effortlessly. Now let's close with the most important principle. A good money system does not require you to be strong. It assumes you will be weak. It assumes you will be distracted. It assumes you will be emotional. It assumes you will be tired. And it still moves you forward. That's not lowering standards. That's raising design quality. So if you've struggled with money, it's not because you lack discipline. It's not because you're irresponsible. It's not because you don't care. It's because you are trying to solve an energy problem with motivation. And motivation is unreliable. Design is not. When your system works on your worst day, your best days become bonus. That's real financial peace. Now, let's talk about something even more subtle. Most people don't realize that tiredness doesn't just reduce effort, it changes values. When energy is high, people value growth. When energy is low, people value comfort. Neither is wrong. But systems must be built for the low energy value set, because that's where behavior actually happens. A tired brain asks different questions. Not, is this smart? But, is this easy? Not, will this help long term? But will this reduce pressure right now? This is why tired people don't abandon their goals. They abandon the process. The goal still matters. The path feels too heavy. So the system must carry the weight instead of the person. Now let's talk about cognitive offloading. Cognitive offloading means removing thinking from the equation entirely. Calendars do this for memory. Alarms do this for time. Checklists do this for execution. Money systems must do the same for decision-making. If you have to remember to save, it won't happen consistently. If you have to decide when to invest, fear will interfere. If you have to think about what's allowed to spend, fatigue will override logic. Cognitive offloading is not about laziness. It's about preserving mental energy for things that actually matter. Creativity, relationships, health, earning. Money should not be a constant background stressor. It should be a solved problem. Now let's talk about how tiredness distorts risk perception. When tired, people become either overly cautious or dangerously reckless. There is no middle ground. Fear-based tiredness leads to hoarding, paralysis, missed opportunities. Exhaustion-based tiredness leads to impulsive risk, emotional spending, shortcuts. Both are reactions, not decisions. Systems neutralize this by flattening emotional spikes. They smooth behavior across time. Instead of reacting to how today feels, the system averages behavior over months and years. That's how compounding survives emotion. Now let's talk about the role of friction in tired systems. Friction is misunderstood. People think friction is bad. It's not. Friction is a tool. You want low friction for good behavior, high friction for harmful behavior, no friction for neutral behavior. Tired brains follow the path of least resistance. So we decide where resistance lives. Make saving frictionless. Make investing invisible. Make impulsive spending slightly annoying. Make destructive decisions inconvenient. You don't block behavior. You slow it down. Slowness gives logic time to catch up. Now let's talk about timing protection. Tired decisions happen at predictable times, late at night, after work, after emotional events, during boredom. So systems should protect money during those windows. Spending limits that reset monthly, not daily. Delayed purchase rules. Separate late-night spending buffers. Accounts that are harder to access impulsively. This isn't restriction. It's boundary setting with your future self. You're not saying never. You're saying not now. Now let's talk about the lie of constant optimization. Most people think they need the best strategy. They don't. They need a strategy they won't abandon. The best plan that you quit loses to a mediocre plan you stick with. Tired-proof systems prioritize stickiness over perfection. They trade optimization for durability. This is why boring portfolios outperform exciting ones. Why simple systems outperform complex ones. Why fewer rules outperform rigid frameworks. Durability beats brilliance. Now let's talk about emotional neutrality again. The goal is not to feel good about money. That's unstable. The goal is to feel neutral. Neutrality removes urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. When money doesn't trigger emotion, behavior stabilizes. This is why wealthy people often seem detached from money. They're not careless, they're regulated. Their systems absorb the emotional load. Now let's talk about what happens when systems start working. At first, it feels underwhelming. No rush, no excitement, no dramatic wins, just quiet progress. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They mistake boredom for stagnation. So they interfere, they tweak, they override, they chase stimulation, and they break what was working. Tired-proof systems require restraint at the meta level. You resist changing the system unnecessarily. You let it run. Now let's talk about trust. Trust is built through consistency, not intensity. When your system behaves predictably month after month, trust forms. You stop checking, stop worrying, stop micromanaging. That mental relief is huge. And here's the paradox. When you stop obsessing over money, you often make more of it. Because attention frees up. Because energy returns. Because stress decreases. Financial peace improves earning capacity. Now let's talk about failure. Even the best systems fail sometimes. Unexpected expenses, income shocks, human error. A tired-proof system plans for failure. It includes buffers. It includes recovery paths. It includes forgiveness. It doesn't punish mistakes. It absorbs them. Punishment systems create avoidance. Recovery systems create resilience. Now let's talk about why this approach feels different. Because it treats money as an engineering problem, not a moral one. You're not bad. You're not weak. You're not irresponsible. You are just operating without support. Once support exists, behavior stabilizes naturally. Now, let's bring it all together. A money system that works when you're tired doesn't require daily attention, doesn't rely on motivation, doesn't punish imperfection, doesn't demand constant restraint. It assumes you will forget, you will procrastinate, you will feel overwhelmed, you will avoid, and it keeps working anyway. That's the standard, not effort, not hustle, not discipline. Reliability. When money becomes reliable, stress fades. When stress fades, clarity returns. When clarity returns, growth accelerates. That's how people quietly build wealth. Not by pushing harder, but by designing better. In the next video, I'll show you how a single default decision quietly controls the majority of your financial outcomes, without you realizing it's even a decision. Once you see it, you'll understand why small changes outperform massive effort, and why the people who seem effortless aren't lucky. They're designed.